Right, I'd like to welcome you to episode 60 of the Ski Podcast. Today we're going to be covering a whole number of topics. Quarantine is obviously right on the top of the list. What the situation is going to be for skiing this winter we'll be looking at. We've got an update from Silvretta Montafon in Austria. We're going to look at a couple of events. I recently interviewed Jasmin Taylor, the telemarker. She's going to be talking to us, and we're going to look at new technology as well before we consider that subject that a lot of people seem to have forgotten about, Brexit, which is coming along. And I'm lucky enough today to be joined by two guests, and they are Dave Burrows, who is a friend of the show, regular listener. You will know him. He's director of SnowPros Ski School. Hi, Dave.
Hiya, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. And also by Lucy Aspen, who is the online ski editor at the Telegraph. First time on the show. Hi, Lucy.
Hi, Iain. Thank you for having me. Very exciting.
Excellent. Couple of points just want to drop in. Obviously, would like to thank Switzerland Tourism for being our sponsor of the show and helping us to run the show through the winter. And a quick note to you, listener, for episode 59, if you happen to hear an early version, about 20 people did. If you're that listener, then make sure you listen to the full version. Now, I've got a quick question for you two. I'm going to start with you, Dave. Tell me, traditional question, when did you last go skiing?
I last went skiing last week, so exactly 1 week ago last
Thursday. Did you? That's great.
To lead Diablerets to ski the piste that they have open.
Right. Well, actually, I was going to mention Lady Diablerets earlier, but we might as well cover that now because that opened early, didn't it, Dave?
It did. Yeah. I mean, apparently it's since they put all the new installations up there. So since they renewed all of the cable cars and stuff, it's the earliest that they'd ever been open. We had quite a wild kind of weather system come through here about 10 days ago, and it dumped a whole bunch of snow in, on Diablerets and around us. So we've still got snow down to about 2,000 meters where we are. And they decided that they had enough to get the piste open. So they actually opened it on Monday, Monday 28th of September.
Great. And you were one of the first people to enjoy it then, were you?
I was busy on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but on the Thursday, I grabbed a couple of our clients. I said, look, does anyone want to go skiing? Because, it's closer. I was going to go to Saas-Fee, but I've skied the glacier in Saas-Fee 2 or 3 times already this summer, and kind of it's all right, but it's better when they open it down to Morenia, because then you get like 1,000 meters of vertical. That normally only happens after half term. So this was closer, right? It's 45 minutes for me to get to Diablerets, boots on and in the lift. So we just went there, and there's only one piste open. It's not even a kilometer long, and it wasn't, I've got to be honest, it wasn't in amazing condition. It was that sort of early morning glacier, bit crusty on top kind of stuff. And
well, you're definitely making us jealous, because I'm going to ask the same question to Lucy now. When did you last go skiing?
So I went skiing at the end of February. The date eludes me, in Scotland of all places. So I'm extremely jealous of Dave. But yeah, I went up to Glencoe at the end of February when they had that week or two of great snowfall. It was a Wednesday morning, and I just said to my partner, look, we're getting in the car. I think we got in the car at 4 a.m. Drove, because I'm based up in the northwest, drove up to Scotland, took us 4 hours, skied all day, literally every minute we could, and then drove back home. And I am so grateful for that day right now.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. In episode 58, we were talking to Mike about skiing in Scotland, and it's definitely one that I've added to my list. I'm hoping to go there this winter because evidently it looks like skiing in Europe is going to be difficult. We have got we discussed before about the quarantine situation, and that has, although I think so we're recording this today on the 9th of October, and Italy has not been added to the list of countries excluded, although I do know that Italy now requires Britons to have a negative coronavirus test before they arrive into Italy. Switzerland has added a 10-day quarantine to British people going into Switzerland, which is going to make things difficult. But it is getting more and more difficult with the quarantine kind of closing around. And we're going to kind of move on. I mean, you can go skiing if you can go to Europe. Obviously, you mentioned Saas-Fee, Zermatt, Austrian glaciers are all open. You've got Tignes and Les Deux Alpes are both going to be opening for autumn skiing next weekend. And then Val Thorens will open for its winter in November. Lucy, you're writing for the Telegraph on a regular basis, a very regular basis. You're probably putting out more articles than you've ever written, I would guess. I don't know. How do you see the situation for this winter then for British skiers? Do you think the British skiers will be going to the Alps, will be going skiing?
I think if they can, there is no doubt that they will. And at the moment, the answer to whether they can is still so uncertain. We obviously at the Telegraph back in September launched our Test for Travel campaign. And since then, we have been pushing a lot to try and get the government to reconsider this quarantine situation, because it does really put a halt on everything. And if this quarantine stays how it is, and obviously the news from Italy last night about the tests, and we're looking at that this morning, actually, there's a lot of confusion about it. People will be put off going. There will be some that will go and they're in a lucky position to be able to quarantine on their way back, who maybe have a bit more freedom, but the large majority won't. And there's a big debate and question that I have to flag to a lot of people who say, oh, I'll go and I'll quarantine. And I have to say to them, well, have you got the right insurance? There's so much to consider. There's fair enough saying you'll go and you'll quarantine when you get back, but there is a lot to consider. So the government really do need to reconsider this. And we were so close this week to hopefully getting a bit of a breakthrough with the Test for Travel campaign. So just to outline a bit of what that was all about. So the Telegraph launched it back in September, and it was a campaign to urge the government to roll out affordable COVID-19 testing at all UK airports and ports as well. So this isn't just flying, by Christmas. And this would have been an absolute game changer for ski. Yes, a lot of people do go on hot winter holidays, but for us in the ski industry, this is the lifeline that we need. We were hoping for this week an announcement from the government, and we were fed so many lines that there might have been one coming, and then obviously the announcement was just that they're setting up a task force, so there is actually no definite date. Where at first we did think airport testing could have been brought in by the end of October, it's looking more likely that we'll be getting some sort of decision in November. So it means that will skiers from Britain be able to go to the mountains this winter? It means we still don't have an answer, which makes my job forever. It's like navigating a minefield, because no one knows the answer.
Yeah, to clarify, I think how the situation stands is that the government have said they're going to launch a task force, sadly headed by Grant Shapps and Matt Hancock, which doesn't inspire a lot of confidence, but they propose to report by early November, I believe. And they're looking at a couple of ideas, the most likely one being that you could have a test just prior to travel and then just after arrival, which could bring down the quarantine time to 5 days. And to me, it feels like 5 days would make a significant difference in terms of boosting travel. A lot of countries, as we mentioned, Italy are requiring a negative test, although it's still to be clarified. They only announced it yesterday, within 72 hours of arrival into the country or on arrival. So that would make a difference. But there is, you may have come across this, Lucy, something called Common Pass, which I've been reading about. Have you seen this?
Yeah, so there's been quite a bit of chat around this. These are these health passports that people will be able to have, and that shows where they're at and their COVID status. Have you tested negative or positive? And it will track your health history, basically, and it'd be an essential part of travel in the future. And yeah, it's potentially a good idea, because we've had reports in at the Telegraph about people who have travelled to countries that have required a negative test on arrival, and they've struggled to get the paperwork, or they've struggled to actually get the test. So if, as a global thing, and this is the thing, it needs to be a global effort, because Dave makes a very good point. Fair enough, if the UK bring in airport testing and quarantine can drop to 5 or 8 days, fine. But if Switzerland is still saying you have to quarantine for 10 days when you get there, that's not going to happen, because ski holidays, unless you're a very lucky person who goes for longer than a week, are traditionally a week, if not shorter. And I don't think anybody's going to go quarantine for 10 days in Switzerland just for a week skiing. So it needs to be a global effort. And yes, the common pass and these health passports are one step in the right direction, I think.
I think you're right about 10 days. No one's going to go to a country where they have to quarantine. And I guess there's a question over demand as well. I mean, we touched on episode 58 about après ski and the kind of reduction of après ski, and I know you've written about that yourself, but I wonder, Dave, if you think that makes, how much of a difference do you think that would make on someone deciding to go on a ski holiday, whether or not they could experience the same après ski as they might have done previously?
I think in these very strange times that we're living in right now, I think après ski is probably well down the list in terms of reasons why people might go on holiday. I think people are interested in coming for the skiing. I think my general gut feeling of the landscape here in Switzerland, for sure, and they've got a big campaign going on at the moment, sort of trying to get everyone interested in skiing again. The slogan is tous en ski, malgré le COVID-19, which basically means everyone's skiing despite COVID. So I think, well, my gut feeling is, certainly amongst our clientele and stuff like that, is that people are just like itching to get outside and go and do something, right? To go and ski or go and do some sort of physical activity. I'm not sure about après ski so much, and I don't think that is necessarily such a big thing, but you have very different rules there. It's really interesting to hear both your perspective on this, because essentially here in Switzerland, since May the 11th, it's just been kind of business as usual, with a bit of kind of marketing.
Well, I think, as you know, Dave, I was lucky enough to go out to Saas-Fee and Zermatt in July, and it felt so nice to be in a kind of normal type of place, for sure. And I think it's interesting, the Swiss, a lot of countries are focusing on their domestic markets, because they can already see that international markets are going to be decimated. What about in terms of the question for you, Lucy, in terms of skiing itself? In France, for example, and in Austria, they made it pretty clear that you have to wear a face mask in contained lifts, gondolas, cable cars, not on chairlifts, etc. But they're not planning to introduce any quotas of the number of people on the mountain. But I think in the States, that is, and not that we're likely to be going to the States, but they've got a different policy in the States where they are saying they're going to sell a limited number of lift passes.
Yeah, so Vail Resorts have come out, and I really admire their communications actually throughout this whole thing. They've been really great with how they've come out with all their information. Rob Katz, the CEO of Vail Resorts, so they obviously own the majority of the major resorts in North America, including Whistler in Canada and Vail and places like that. He came out with a very comprehensive letter which outlines all the measures they're going to bring in place. And yes, people are going to have to reserve their space on the slopes. They're going to have to, so it means your pass is going to have to have been bought in advance. And that is in order for them to reduce / monitor the capacity on the mountains. They're very eager to stress that because of the size of the mountains in North America, they're not expecting there to be every single day people being turned away. But I think the issue with that will come on powder days, for example. So when I went to Whistler, 3 winters ago, we were so lucky to have some really great powder days, and I have never seen queues like it. because people, that's the nature of it in North America, especially when they live close to the slopes. They can just travel up and make the most of great conditions, and so you should. But I don't think that type of experience will be able to happen in America this year, and it is a stark contrast to what's happening in Europe. I mean, they're also bringing in health screening for ski lessons across Vale resorts, and that's something we're not seeing in Europe. So yeah, it's a real difference, because I can see when I look at the rules that are going to be in place in France and Austria, yeah, we're going to know that COVID exists, but it's going to be a bit less intrusive on the ski experience. Whereas in America, fair enough, we're probably not going to be able to get there. You're definitely going to feel a difference.
Yeah, and Dave, let's cut to the chase. I mean, do you think that, I know resorts are open now, Diablerets is open now, but everything is very dynamic. Every time we record an episode, things have changed. Do you think resorts will open as normal for this winter? What's your feeling being on the ground? You live in Chambéry, don't you?
Yeah, I do. So look, from a Swiss perspective, the Association of Swiss Lift Operators have basically come out this week in the newspapers and said that the lifts will not shut this winter. So it's going to be a winter like others, but like I said, with a bit of mastery in enclosed environments, so bubble lifts and telecabins and funiculars.
Let's hope it does move towards that. I mean, I know that there are travel restrictions in place, for example, into Switzerland, not just from the UK, but certain zones of France as well at the moment. Yeah. But normal opening for ski resorts this winter, I know they're very keen, to make it happen, even if they're really focusing on those domestic markets. So this is our update in kind of early to mid October. We'll see how it progresses. Hopefully we'll be reporting on. We'll definitely like to have you back on the show telling us about your skiing in Switzerland, Dave, and hopefully we'll hear a little bit from Tignes and Les des Alpes as well. I'm just going to drop in now a short interview. Well, it's not actually an interview. It's a report sent in by one of our listeners, Robin, who's actually working out in a hire shop in Silvretta, Montafon in Austria. And he sent us this report.
Hello, this is Robin from Austria. And today I'm here to talk about the Corona situation and how it's going to turn out in the winter. I hope you guys are excited. We're located in Austria, in Montafon. Ski area is called Silvretta Montafon. I think we're one of the hotspots for free riding, free skiing, also all mountain skiing. Maybe you guys been here before. Very nice ski area for sure. So we are getting used to the face masks and also to the disinfection stuff. Yeah, it was all summer here, but it worked out pretty good for sure. And so that's how we're gonna progress in winter. We've been to the glaciers already, skied a little bit, and you queue up in lines, you already have to wear a face mask for sure. Yes, you have to disinfect your hands, but in the ski area it feels quite normal already. Like you don't have to wear your face mask while you're skiing, which is kind of nice. We like kids that we don't have to wear that at least. And that's some details about the ski area and how they're gonna, I would say, develop the winter. We will have a lot of different rules this winter. You will find probably some maximum for the gondolas. Not everyone can go in there. It's gonna be a maximum of gondolas, and lifts are probably going to operate longer and start earlier to get done with the people, that it works out more fluent. And yeah, that's how I think they're going to take care good of it. The après ski is going to get very, very less because it's just hard to keep the people away from each other, especially when they get drunk and have party, and then it's not that easy, I guess, to split people apart, but it's gonna turn out good. And the ski area is starting to follow up already in the summer with all this stuff. There's gonna be a maximum of people who get in the huts, who can go eat and drink, but at the end it's gonna work out for sure. I mean, people are always worried that how it's gonna turn out. Is it gonna be different this season? But my opinion is that people are still gonna be happy as long as you're on the mountain and you have that feeling of freedom. That's all you go for skiing, you know. I don't think it's very much. You're not going to ski only to drink. You go skiing for the freedom, for the passion, and for everything, and that is not gonna change, and that is gonna work. We have a lot of interest in touring. Touring is exploding at the moment. We sold heaps already in summer of touring skis, and everyone is thinking, because of also of the social distancing, that people will go touring this winter a lot, because you have your freedom. You can go alone, and this is just something which is really epic, I think, and will turn out good for sure. We are looking very promising into the winter. Probably it's going to be a maximum of people who get into the shop, but from that, yeah, we have to wear masks in the shop, but I think those few minutes the people can take as they get on the mountain after. And yeah, we would be very happy if you guys look over into the Silvretta Montafon, into Austria. Hope you can fly here. Hope it's gonna turn out good. So a lot of English people and a lot of people around the world here already, and everyone is stoked to come here and enjoys the freedom, you know. And we as a shop, as Sport Harry, wish you a very, very nice day, a very nice winter, and I hope you can shred all the lines you want and have all the fun you can have. And yeah, hopefully hear you guys soon and have a nice time. That's from me, Robin, from Austria, Sport Harry. Wishing you a nice day. Thank you very much.
So that was quite interesting. Thank you very much for that, Robin. And if you are listening to this listener and you're out in the Alps and you want to give us a report on how things are going to be different, that would be great, because the more info we have from the ground, the better. I'm just going to cover a couple of things we mentioned in a couple of episodes ago about Listex, which we're quite looking forward to. Something that was going to happen, a trade event in the industry. Sadly, rules changed. That was cancelled as well. The world's largest ski show we mentioned is not going on either. But more positively, we discussed the National Snow Show, which is the event that's going to happen at the NEC in October 2021. And Mike and I talked about this in episode 58, and we didn't have enough time to include this. But I wanted to let you hear what Mike had to say about that Birmingham show.
And the Birmingham show is a great idea, because when I first started, I had a previous company called In the Powder, where I took ski groups to Kicking Horse when it first went from Whitetooth to Kicking Horse in British Columbia.
Yeah.
And I used to be an exhibitor at the Earl's Court show, as it was then, and at the Birmingham show. And you saw very different groups of people. And the Birmingham show was a fantastic thing. And certainly people from parts of Wales, the northern part of Wales, from the Midlands and from the north. Yeah. They weren't coming to London. It was too expensive then. So there's something where they can go back to Birmingham now. I'm convinced it'll be a big success, because there's a lot of a lot of people living in that area.
Yeah, I mean, I did shows when I was with Natives and when I was running that company, and we also found that there's something about, like, Manchester wasn't quite as good. It was a much smaller show, but the Birmingham show historically was always quite a big one. And we definitely found that was a really committed audience. You know, I don't know about the actual numbers, maybe there were more people going to London, but the type of people who were going along to Birmingham were definitely people who were interested in buying, really, committed skiers and boarders, not people who'd just gone for a day out because they're looking for something, to do. I mean, in London, you're competing with so many things, but yeah, I'm sure it will be a success, that one.
Lucy, you're possibly slightly biased on this in this respect. I don't know if you consider Preston within range of Birmingham. I mean, do you think you get a more committed type of skier up north?
I think, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think you'll get people. Birmingham's a place that you have to travel to anywhere, no matter where you live in the north. I mean, it's still a good hour and a half, 2 hours away from me. So if you're going to go to a show like that, you're making a commitment, and you're obviously passionate about skiing. So yeah, interesting.
Next, I would like to just mention Jasmin Taylor. I interviewed her a couple of weeks ago, and in fact, we already have a ski podcast special, which listener you may have listened to already because that went live earlier this week, and you may have watched it on Facebook Live as well. But Jasmin is a really incredibly successful skier, and also an extremely modest one. She's won 3 World Cup races, has a couple of World Championship medals. She's got 30 plus podiums, and I just had a little chat with her.
I actually learnt to ski at the Ipswich dry ski slope just up the road. I had a project in primary school my last year, and we had to do a speech on mountains. My parents saw the effort I'd gone to with this project, and decided it'd be quite a cool place to go on holiday. So because we were going there on holiday, my dad said, "Oh, we should make it worthwhile and get some ski lessons at the local slope." So I just got hooked. As a 10-year-old, I was just absolutely hooked, and I loved it.
That's great. How long is the slope at Ipswich?
I actually don't know exactly. I'd say 150 meters.
Oh, okay. Not a reasonable distance. And then I'm guessing at some point then you got into racing, because I think before you moved on to Telemark, you were part of the Alpine squad.
I wasn't on the British team. I was actually, well, the full story would be I started racing on the dry ski slopes. So I went from the regional to the national circuit. And at some point, I did a dry slope ski camp with the British Ski Academy, and the director of the academy, Malcolm Aspen, he said, "Hey, you should come do some training with us on snow." And from there, I went away and I did some alpine training. But it was about age 13, 14 when I started really training on snow. And a couple of years later, I tried ski cross. I was on the England team in ski cross, but not in alpine. And then after a season or so of doing that, I switched to telemark. So
okay. In fact, I had Emily Sarsfield on the last episode of the podcast, episode 59, and she told me that she was involved with coaching you back in the day at some point.
She was a coach at the British Ski Academy. Yeah, I remember being very in awe of her. Very impressed because she turned up. I can't remember it ever so well. I was quite young at that point, I think. But I skied with her. I think probably for a week or 2. I can't remember honestly, but I remember.
Well, she said to me that you were very determined, but at some point you obviously decided to make that switch from ski across from alpine to telemark. What prompted that? How did you even try telemarking?
Well, but back at the British Ski Academy, Malcolm was running a trial week in telemark. So everybody at the academy either had a morning or an afternoon doing telemark. This random French guy called Seb. And I went one afternoon and I thought, oh, this is actually really interesting. I was good enough, but I didn't quite grasp it, and I wanted to just get my head around it a little bit more. So I asked Malcolm, actually I probably pestered Malcolm, please can I go back for another session? So Malcolm let me go back, and I was kind of probing Seb with a few questions, trying to really understand it. And I thought, I really like this. This is really fun. But it's not just telemark. At the British Ski Academy, we tried ski jumping, we tried cross-country skiing, big air, ski cross. So they're really good at getting you to try all sorts of different types of skiing, which I think is really important because skiing is really fun. So
absolutely, but also when you're dealing with young talent, I think I'm aware a bit of this with cricket. They try not to get people to specialise too young, because if you have an ability, you don't want to be tying someone down as like a bowler or batsman or wicket keeper at an early age. You want them to try everything. And so, and that the Seb who gave you that session, back then, is that the Seb who's still your coach now?
That is the same Seb. Yeah.
Right.
So from there, from this telemark taster day, I I actually went on eBay and I bought some equipment. And I took myself, well, my dad actually at the time, I think I was about 17, so I wasn't driving at this point, but my dad would take me each week to Hemel, and we'd meet the Hemel Telemark Club. And this was actually set up by a guy called Cameron Fisher. So every week I would go and ski with these guys, and I'd just try and really master the technique. So skiing with a big lunge, but really having a proper telemark style. And after summer of doing this, I returned to Les Houches where I met Seb, and I said, please can I have a lesson? And it was actually really difficult to track him down, which I later realised he was actually just really avoiding that lesson because the secretary of the ski school was saying, there's an English girl here, she's in a cat suit, she wants to do a telemark lesson.
Dave, do you know Jasmin Taylor at all? Have you come across?
I do indeed, and I'm kind of I'm with you on this. I think it's criminal how kind of under rated kind of or unknown, Jasmin is. It's absolutely incredible what she's done within telemark. It's extraordinary, really, compared to some of the other alpine disciplines. There's quite a lot of really good alpine skiers coming through that you'll see in the next few years for sure. And we've got obviously Dave and Laurie sort of flying the flag in the World Cup. But but Jasmin's been doing this for ages. It's extraordinary she doesn't get more coverage, really.
Yeah, that's right. What about yourself, Lucy? Have you ever been telemarking? Do you know Jasmin at all?
I haven't been telemarking. We have had people do it and report for us, and it sounds like I wouldn't be very good at it. So I'm not going to really go out there. But yeah, I do know Jasmin. We've interviewed her before, and I completely agree. She is completely under the radar. Her achievements are fantastic, and it's that type of discipline that I think people need to know about more, especially when we've got an athlete who is performing so well at such a top level. So good luck to her. I hope she does well this season, however may it be.
Yeah, me as well. I mean, it would obviously help her so much if it was an Olympic discipline, but it still remains not, as you'll discover from the interview. And listener, if you enjoyed that, if you did listen to it, you can always, in our back catalogue, we've got interviews, one-off specials with Graham Bell and Benjamin Alexander, the Jamaican skier. And in fact, if you look far enough in our back catalogue, you can find our avalanche safety special that Dave did with Jim. I think last season, maybe the one before, but these are amongst the specials that we've got back there. In the avalanche side of things, we talk, or you guys talk a little bit about the technology we have. Technology has obviously changed a lot. I have to thank Andrew Brannan, one of our listeners, who sent me some clips from Ski Survey magazine in 1988. And in it, there were some technology predictions, and I recognise the name of the author, a chap called David Goldsmith, who I've seen him on different ski social media, and I tracked him down, and I was actually able to interview him. So, watch out, Lucy, because 20, 30 years in the future, someone might be asking you about articles that you wrote.
That's terrifying.
Way in the past. But David was brilliant. Today, I'm with David Goldsmith. He was the equipment editor for Ski Survey magazine back in September 1988. And the reason I invited David on today and wanted to have a little chat was because one of our other listeners, Andrew Brannan, sent me this article from September 1988 called Wired Up. And Wired Up was a prediction of all the ski tech to come. Hi, David. How are you?
Hi, good morning.
Do you remember writing this article, Wired Up?
Yeah, it was one of the more memorable articles I did, because somehow in that year of 1988, quite a lot of electronic technology was coming to fruition. Of course, the decade of 1988, we would very much, the decade of the 1980s, we would very much associate with major progress with personal computing and mobile phone technology. So these things were all bubbling up within a general international environment of microchips and what they were enabling. And
Yeah.
skiing has always been a fascinating focus for companies because so many people ski, including engineers and owners of companies and so on. And everybody wants to be part of the action. So electronics kind of naturally found its way into skiing via people who maybe had slightly amateurish reasons initially, but were commercially involved, and then
Yeah.
serious stuff came out of that.
What I really love about the article, even though it was written over 30 years ago, and I know I'm going to post it in the show notes. He actually talking about a situation in 2001. So a couple of these things might have been ahead of the time. But how many things that you mention in there that now exist within the world of skiing? I noticed in the intro there, you talk about computerized snowmaking, which I've covered before. I remember going out to Les Arcs in the winter and talking to them about how they're measuring snow depths and controlling the snow machines to make sure that it goes out most efficiently. And you talk about robotic piece machines. And I was only reading the other day about some of the piece bashers that are controlled, linked to GPS, so that they can make sure the snow goes in the areas where it's needed most.
Yes, not only that, they have this incredible computerization that enables them to know how much snow is beneath the machine itself.
And I love the way that you kind of predict the advent of, what is not necessarily described as a smartphone, but something that you wear on your wrist that has a microcomputer in it, and you use it as an electronic lift pass, which seems to any younger listeners to the show, they probably don't even realize that lift passes used to be a physical thing that you had to carry on you and you had to show to get on every lift.
Yeah, absolutely. The item you're talking about actually was, I mean, I wouldn't claim to have been a science fiction writer or something like that. I was dealing here with real predictions being made by international companies, and that, if I recall correctly, came via an Austrian company called Ski Data.
Yeah.
Now, Ski Data has been very influential internationally, not only in the development of wireless technology and microchips that will read lift passes, but of course that technology is directly applicable to urban transport systems. Like in London, we use the Oyster card. These are directly comparable technologies, which maybe had a launch pad with ski passes, but of course had a much bigger market via urban transport needs.
I mean, you mentioned in the article, or predict a cashless society, which exists probably now even more so than ever before. I think there's another thing in there you're talking about, speed tracking. I mean, now I think a lot of people would use something like ski tracks on their mobile, or maybe I don't know, Garmin or Strava or something like that.
Yeah, in terms of wearable devices, yes, people are fascinated with all this data. I mean, to be honest, as somebody who's done so much skiing and really appreciates the outdoor environment, to be perfectly frank and honest, I think sometimes there's a bit too much obsession with, reading electronic devices. Just enjoy the scenery and what nature provides, because that's the best treat of all.
I would be with you on that score. Yeah. Certainly, a lot of people tend to be too obsessed with their stats. I believe, I think I am right in saying that you know Arnie Wilson pretty well. Previously on the show, we reviewed his book, Ski the World, for Ski Book Group. And one of the things we found fascinating in it was, at the time, he was measuring distance by a little clicker that was attached to the side of his ski. Yeah. And it's so hard, to imagine that now, and it's so easy to use an app or something like that to measure how far you've gone.
And of course, one wonders where all this data goes in the end. And it's a little bit spooky to think that ski lift companies and ski resorts have a huge amount of data on their customers on the mountain, and it's important this data is used collectively rather than for any private study of an individual skier. So hopefully the data is being used responsibly.
Yeah, well, certainly in some resorts you can use it to assess what the loading is on certain lifts around the resort, so you can adjust your skiing accordingly. So as far as the ski tech is concerned, there are real benefits there. I also noticed in the article that you mentioned solar-powered skiing, and although that's been fairly slow to come about, I think there are some lifts now which are run purely from solar power, and certainly in some resorts, they have more solar power arrays in place than they used to.
Yeah, I mean, I think possibly in the article that, to be frank, I think I made a slight error in perhaps being too optimistic about how much solar power you could derive from, say, solar cells on your ski boots, which, to be honest, would not be that great. And if you want to power things like heated ski gloves or ski boots, you probably need a bit more solar energy, and that's why those kind of devices are still reliant upon batteries rather than solar cells.
Finally, I just finish off, and I also saw that in the article you predicted an electronic ski instructor. And you've probably seen recently, there's quite a few very clever devices that can communicate from your boots, from your skis via Bluetooth to your headphones to give you in real time feedback on your skiing.
Yeah, well, let's just be careful here. As a qualified instructor, albeit a while ago, I mean, I was qualified in 1975 on Cairngorm in Scotland. Let's be very clear about what ski instruction is. It is very much demonstration and observation of a skier's physical movements. The supposition that you can accurately really judge a skier via sensors in a ski boot, I would be a little bit skeptical about. It's a very personal and very physical activity that requires an instructor's eyeballs gazing with a lot of experience, gazing on a skier's physical movement.
One thing that is for sure is that, as in 1988, as now, there's a market within skiing for people who want to get the latest ski tech, whatever it offers. And I think that article, sums that up really well. There'll always be people out there looking for the best possible equipment or the best way to upgrade their skiing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it is a very consumerist activity in that regard. And again, just coming back to the point we were discussing earlier, in contrast, if you want to be a real alpinist and just get on your touring skis and get away from the madding crowd, that option is always available. And we may well see this very, very strange winter coming up, that a lot of people will opt for that alternative because they will want to get away from other human beings, sadly, and they probably won't want a lot of electronic kit. They'll just want to get up on those high summits and explore the landscapes.
Well, that's brilliant, David. I think you were equipment editor of Ski Survey, which is a ski club magazine back then, and I know that you've been involved in the ski industry for a long time. So hopefully we can have you back on the show at some point to cover some other elements as well.
I'd be delighted, Iain. Thank you very much for contacting me.
I found that conversation really interesting. I think that David's projections, he was writing in 1988 and he was projecting ahead to 2001. But so many of the things that he mentioned have actually come into existence now. And we all have our favourite bits of ski tech. But I wondered, Dave, what's your favourite bit of ski tech? I bet you are actually a real kind of techie guy. You've probably got loads of stuff, right?
No, I'm not. This is the thing. I read that article and I looked at the question you were going to ask me, and I was like, this guy's been amazing because he's essentially predicted ski tracks. He's predicted the Swatch watch, which was the ski pass watch. He's predicted carve technology, which Tom Gelly is using to great effect this summer in Australia. The goggle thing with the thing on the nose, like I've done that before with a bit of tape and stuff to get people to start looking upwards. There's a whole bunch of stuff, but Yeah, I've got to be honest with you. I'm a pretty low tech kind of person.
Okay.
I'm sorry to disappoint you, but
No, you like to keep it real, Dave.
Yeah, well, no, but skiing for me is an escape, right? And there's already too much tech in our lives anyway. In my opinion, I can't wait for the day when I get rid of the smartphone, the laptop, and all of this sort of stuff, and just go back to, my rubbishy old Nokia 3310, because I'm sick of it. I'm absolutely sick of it. And when I go skiing, I just want to be. Oh, it sounds like a hippie or whatever, but I just want to be one with the snow, really.
I don't actually see any problem with what you're saying there at all. And to be honest with you, it's an increasing demand. You sometimes find that people do want it. In fact, I'm trying to think now, Lucy might be able to recall, but I think there are some properties in the Alps where they actually advertise the fact that they don't have a phone signal or Wi-Fi there, so you truly can escape from it all. Lucy, what about yourself? Are you a techie person? Do you have...
Us two are probably the worst guests for you to have to ask this question. I mean, the nature of my job, yes, so like I'll never go out without a GoPro, all that nonsense for recording things on the slopes, taking pictures. What I tend to do, because I am a bit of a geography geek, I do like looking at maps and things like that. I tend to get whoever I'm skiing with to have the likes of Ski Tracks or Fat Map on, because I do like at the end of the day to look back and see where we've been. But personally, whether it's just me being ignorant and not using it, I don't tend to use them. I'm a very similar. It isn't, while it is work for me, it is also a bit of an escape. So yes, beyond strapping a GoPro to me and taking a couple of pictures every once in a while, I try and keep it at that, or else I think it clouds the experience a bit too much. I just like to look where I am and enjoy the feeling of snow under my feet rather than worry about how fast I'm going, because I don't actually go that fast. So I don't think I want to know how slow I'm going.
Yeah, well, I guess that is great. There is an app that you might find interesting called Peak Finder, which is quite good, and you can just take a picture of the mountains and it'll tell you what they're all called. I mean, also, I don't tend to use any of these things, but if I'm ski touring, then I do use Garmin and Strava, because I'm interested to know what vertical I've done and how long it's taken me, etc., because it's part of my training. But Dave, you mentioned about wanting to get away from it all, and David himself in the interview referred to ski touring and how it's more of a trend, and Robin from Montafon also talked about ski touring and saying how that's becoming more and more popular. And there is a kind of feeling perhaps this season that with ski touring, you won't have to, you don't have to go on a lift if you're ski touring. You don't necessarily have to buy a lift pass. You can certainly get away from the crowds, but there's a feeling of being able to get back to nature more. And do you kind of feel that? Do you buy into that, Dave?
I do feel it, but I don't tour. If you see me, I'm not a mountain goat. I'm not designed to go uphill. That's for sure. But I get it, and I've done my fair share of touring. I understand it, and we've actually got some really cool spots actually round our way. So there's a very specific rando park in Morjan. They've sort of designated one whole side of the mountain for touring, and there's all sorts. There's different graded routes for you to go up, and it's so busy with people wanting to do that. So I totally get it. A nice gentle tour up and a bit of a ski down, go and have a nice big lunch, and you kind of earned it. I get it, and I know part of our role also is to know where the kind of the best lift access off-piste stuff is that is sort of quiet, and there's plenty of that around where we are, where you can kind of just get back to the there being no one around. I think there's a lot to be said for that.
What about yourself, Lucy? Have you been touring, and do you see it as a coming trend?
I have dabbled. I did a lovely my first ever touring day really in Courchevel 2 seasons ago, and absolutely fell in love with it, with the escape and the different side of the resort you see. And yes, I think this winter is going to be the winter that resorts can really promote these other activities that people can do. I'm going to talk about it a bit more actually at the ListX Live conference we've got coming up next week. So yeah, I think the things like ski touring, cross-country skiing, I've tried that as well. Again, I was rubbish at it. But these things that are traditional, people wouldn't potentially do on a traditional ski holiday, this is maybe the winter to try them, because yeah, people might want to get away from the crowds. They might want to escape a bit more. And it's also that sense of, we've been threatened with not being able to go skiing. Now is the time to make the most of it. So go and try it all, because we've now experienced what it's like to maybe have this prospect of not being able to go on ski holiday. So I'm all for trying absolutely everything now, just to make sure that I've ticked it off my list.
Yeah, I think you're right that a lot of, I mean, that's just people's attitudes to life in general. I think people are more prepared to not leave things on their list unticked and to try and be more active. So a lot of what we've discussed has all been related to coronavirus and COVID. We tend, it seems to be slipping by a little bit, but we do have Brexit imminently creeping up on us. And Dave, you run a ski school out in Switzerland. It's obviously not in the EU, but I wondered, in your position, I mean, you run the Ski Instructor podcast and you speak to high-profile instructors on a regular basis. I wondered if, what you feel or how you think Brexit might affect British instructors who are working in Europe in this winter and into the future.
Yeah, it's going to be a tricky one, and there's nothing like leaving it late, is there, for everyone to make their mind up. This whole thing again is a nonsense. It's the same thing, and they're really playing this sort of brinksmanship game that they're playing with the EU. I can see why they're doing it, but it's causing chaos over here. So I'll give you the Swiss example, but I've also researched this a little bit with some of my European colleagues, and the Swiss example. So I've gone in a number of times into the commune, because all the work permits and stuff here are issued locally by, so for me, it will be, my business is based in Valdivia. So you go into the commune and that's who organizes it all. And I've been in there a number of times over the summer, and they've said to me, no idea what's going on. As of 1st of January, nothing. I'm like, okay, well, that makes it very, very difficult for me to run my business, because no one really knows. And actually, so last week or the week before, they said, okay, well, now we've had a bit of guidance. So anyone who is British that you're taking on needs to have their declaration. So we have a short-term declaration process that we use, and there's a little website, and you put all your stuff in there. They say your declarations for this season for your British instructors have to be into that system and received before 31st of December, and confirmed by 31st of December. Anything after that, and they said this to me, this is their words, anything after that, we have no clue what's going on. So that's the experience from that side. Now I'd say I'm 20 minutes from the French border. So in France now, you have to have either some sort of working visa or what they call a carte de séjour, which is kind of the same thing. And those documents needed to have been done by October or whatever. And actually this is, and again, it's the same thing. Still nobody knows. And you can go and ask all of this same stuff for Austria, Italy, all of these places. Nobody knows what's going to happen to British people who want to work in the Alps. If you hold a British passport now, and let's say you want to work in France, the employer has to justify why there aren't any local people or EU qualified people who are better qualified or equally qualified for the job as you. Probably the biggest one will be, they're Anglophone, so we need native English speakers here for my ski school. That would be the argument that I would go for. How do you know if that's going to go through or not?
Sure, and I would guess that you're a business owner in Switzerland. I mean, how are you planning for the winter ahead? Because you don't know. You have a typically British clientele who come to you to the ski school in the winter. How are you planning ahead for how many instructors to employ and what you're going to do?
It's difficult, because I've taken the team down by 2 this year. basically, so now but what we do is we look after a very specific market of expats who live here in Switzerland. So at the weekends we're rammed, and we will continue to be rammed. That's no issue, because they don't have an issue getting here, which is lovely. And I'm really, really pleased about, you know, how everyone's kind of pulled together as a community. It's really, really nice. But what's going to happen is, because the team is smaller and I can't cope with any extra demand, all those people who, you know, sort of come in or want to book a little bit late, I'm going to have to say, nah, sorry, because I just don't know. I just don't know if I can take on 2 extra people. Furthermore, then when you start speaking to other people abroad, because of, you know, this is jumping a little bit back to COVID and quarantines and stuff, I'm speaking anecdotally for lots of people that I've spoken to. Lots of people in the Alps have no bookings whatsoever. Like,
do you mean
none.
ski schools you're talking about specifically?
Transfer companies, ski hire shops, like the whole lot. There's so much uncertainty that people they're just not booking. So where a lot of people would have all of their winter kind of half booked out already by now, there's nothing. This is my anecdotal stuff. There's a lot of people sort of who are intending to go skiing if they can, but in terms of actual deposits paid and money paid up,
I can actually back that up, because, you know, I work for a bunch of different companies. I look at a lot of different analytics accounts, and I can see what's going on without, you know, revealing any client information. I can tell you that there is a strong body of people who are looking. There are lots of people doing research. There are lots of people who are, you know, finding out about holidays. The pages per session are very high. People are looking at lots of different pages in the site, and they're doing valid research, but no one is booking, because people need that certainty to book. And in fact, the Ski Club of Great Britain had a survey that they brought out earlier this week, which said that 86% of skiers would travel this winter if they can.
Yeah.
The issue is quarantine, and in fact 79% of them said they thought that the quarantine system was not fit for purpose. So we could probably I don't want to dwell too much on the negative, but the fact is that this is where we are. So in relation to, you know, the instruction side of things, I feel for you. You're running a business, we're all working in the industry, and I think possibly the best thing that can happen for us is if that government task force, you know, does look into things and hopefully reviews, comes together perhaps with Common Pass to allow testing so that people can travel between countries. Because if you can prove that you're negative, then why shouldn't you be able to travel between countries? And, you know, when you have a situation where you have other countries such as Italy and other countries around Europe where you have a much lower incidence of COVID than in the UK, then in some respects you'd almost be you know, safer over there. But I don't want to go too much into the numbers. We'll try and keep it as non-political as we can. I'm just going to wrap up the show just now. A couple of reviews that we've been sent in. Amy Moore via Facebook said, I just want to say I absolutely love your ski podcast. That's very kind of you, Amy. It really cheers you up, especially during the pandemic, to hear all the ski chats. I wish I had more podcasts more often. So we're working on that with all of the specials. On Snowheads forum, a chap called Thunderer said just discovered the podcast, really enjoying it. Also, Benny Boy on Snowheads, good podcast, hadn't listened before. Hope you're still listening, Benny Boy. And on Twitter, a user called the Overball #1 said it's a really good listen. So thank you very much for all of those. We are coming to the end of our time for today. So just to let you know that in the next episode, 61, in a couple of weeks' time, I will be interviewing someone, to be confirmed exactly who yet, from the Jungfrau area, to talk about that Eiger Express lift that I mentioned recently. Ski Book Group will be looking at Whole Life by Robert Seethaler. We just ran out of a little bit of time to include it in this one. Very good book, highly recommend it. Won't take you long to read. It's about a guy who is born in a tiny little Austrian ski resort in the early 20th century, and his life unfolds in this ski resort or in this village in the mountains as he sees it become a ski resort. And it's a very poignant and beautiful book that won't take long to read at all. And we'll be looking at a couple of other interviews lined up for 61 as well. So listener, if you've enjoyed this, please do subscribe. Send us your feedback via social media at The Ski Podcast. We're on Twitter, Facebook, theskipodcast.com. And I would like to thank Dave from SnowPros Ski School in Champery and Lucy from the Telegraph for joining me today. Thank you very much for your input, guys.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And everyone stay positive, eh? Maybe
stay positive. Exactly. That's a very, very good point to finish on. We're going to stay positive. Hopefully in another couple of weeks' time we'll be able to report something more positive as well. But otherwise, thanks very much, everyone. And that's it for today.